Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi. I'm very excited today because we have a great guest. If you know his work and you've watched him, you've seen him do great impressions such as Groucho Marx, Jimmy Stewart, George W. Bush. Who could forget his episodes in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which we really enjoyed. He's done work on 90210, Family Matters. He voiced Shaggy and Scooby-Doo, Get a Clue. He's just done everything. And today he's going to talk about his book, The Work and Actor Method. And it is an honor to have on our show the one and only Jim Meskimen. And Jim, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mike. And you rattled off some credits there that are hoary with age, but that's fine. I'm as an actor right now. We're not talking too much about recent things because I'm on strike along with my brothers and sisters and in the struggle in the WGA, and we're all hoping that'll get resolved soon. But I've done quite a bit of work since the 1980s and 90s. Recently, I can talk about the video game that just came out, which is Star Trek Resurgence.
Yeah, talk about that because that's a real cool thing that's going on.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm not a gamer, so I have not played this game, but I've heard that it's really terrific. And I play Captain Solano, who is a major character, who's like this starship commander who has had the unfortunate incident of having had his ship destroyed earlier. And he's sort of coming back after that. So there's still some question, about is this guy really capable or not? He's a little older. He's gray haired. He looks kind of like me if I had a gray mustache. And, but he's got I put a little bit of just a little bit of a Southern accent on him, a Texas accent, I guess more properly.
Right.
And made him sound a little more world weary. And sometimes he gets real mad. And anyway, I did right here in this booth. This is my place of business. So I portray a lot of gray haired characters in this booth.
Right.
I also do Colonel Sanders too, who is a white-haired character, to be honest.
Right, and one of the impressions I really like is the one you do of Ron Howard. I mean, you do an outstanding impression of Ron Howard. So let me ask you this, Jim. How did it come about you doing impressions? Because you do them so well. I mean, I love the Jimmy Stewart one. I mean, they're just great.
Thanks. Well, it's just. Why does a kid get interested in something? Why does a kid get interested in soccer or horseshoes or drawing or painting or singing in the choir or tap dancing or whatever? I think when we're young, we just kind of get attracted to things. And if we have the luxury of being able to pursue our interests, nobody shuts us down or puts up a big wall. I think about kids who want to drum and be drummers at an early age, and how few of them probably have parents that are patient enough to let them indulge and go down that path.
Right.
But in my case, I was early on attracted to accents and voices. Why? I don't know. It's who I am. I also was attracted to drawing and painting, and I pursued that as well at the same time. But my mother is an actress.
She was Marion Ross.
Ross. And she's still kicking around. She's almost 95. She's just the sweetest treasure. And as a mom, she was great because she never shot down anything I was interested in, which was, in fact, she was quite supportive. And she also had an ear for dialects and accents and voices and characters, obviously being a wonderful character actor herself. So we used to kind of play around that way in our house, and I don't remember my sister doing it so much, but she's younger and, I just probably wasn't paying attention. But my mom was very indulgent that way. And so I began to realize early on that, hey, this is actually, there is some value in this, if only for human interaction's sake, only for amusement's sake. There is some legitimacy in this play. And so I always just sort of did it. And now at the same time, though, I was quite bashful about it. Outside of my family circle or my close friends, I was really tender about performing it, unless it was very structured. Like, you're in the school play and you're playing the old man. Like, okay, good. We got rehearsals and all right. And there's an audience and they're going to be quiet, But if it was just like in a group of strangers and someone said, hey, do your Cowardly Lion impression, I'd go, I was too nervous about it. And that took a long time to get sorted out. But yeah.
And I mean, let me ask you though, having a mother who was an actress and who was successful as Marion, I mean, did you, is that a big reason why you inspired to be one? I mean, how did that all come about for you, more or less?
Well, it definitely had an effect on me. I mean, it was kind of strange because she was a working actress up until Happy Days. So a working actress is a person that, or a working actor is someone that does a few guest spots on shows, does a movie here and there, a commercial, a play, but isn't like every day going to the office and doing stuff as someone who's on a TV series does. So I observed her lifestyle, and I don't know if I would have found that path of the working actor quite as attractive as being in a hit show.
Yeah.
And when I was about 13 or 14, Happy Days began to slowly become, because it ran 11 seasons, and it was a very slow rise to prominence in a world of 3 channels on the TV. So that was quite attractive. I mean, it was like everybody had watched the show. Everybody loved my mom. They got to, they made money. They traveled the world in the off season. In the hiatus, they would play softball with different teams around the world. My mom, I had to teach her kind of how to play, how to use a mitt and hit a ball back in our backyard.
Right.
Who gets to do that? So when I saw that and I admired Ron Howard, and I admired Henry Winkler and the other Anson and Don and everybody in the cast. I used to go to the show a lot and watch it, and it looks like they were just having the best time. So that definitely influenced my vision. But at the same time, it was kind of confusing because how do you get there?
Yeah.
I'm still not there. And I've been in the business now over 35 years. It's a kind of they hit the jackpot. And it's like saying, hey, if you win the lottery, you'll have a great life. Like, oh, good. How do you win the lottery? Well, you can buy a bunch of tickets and maybe. So that's kind of that's what got me into the lifestyle, is that I like having fun. And luckily, I've stumbled on many, many ways to have, I think, an equivalent amount of fun without being contaminated by money. So there's that.
And, the impact your mom has had on so many people is very apparent. And when I had Don Most on my show, I mean, he talked about how she was like, his mentor. She really was. I mean, he looked up to her, and he really kind of took a lot of things what he did by watching her. So, I mean, that's really a credit to her when you have people like that who are telling you that that's the biggest influence in their career.
That's right, Don Most. And I can just imagine, I can just hear Don Most now saying, Marion, listen, I'm having this problem. I don't know what to do. I want to pursue my singing career, but this show is so great. Yeah. I think all the actors, the late Erin Moran and Anson and Ron, they all would go to Mom sometimes because she was a safe person to talk to. She wouldn't say, oh, that's an idiotic idea. She was not that way. She was always hardwired to help. And that's why I think everybody that has had anything to do with her, really appreciates that. And you can really spot the jerks in the world because my mom, they've made my mom feel bad, or they've, kind of insulted her or something like that. I got to spot like people every now and then. There's somebody who's like, and you're like, oh, you're a real prize. You are.
Right. Exactly. So I know there's certain things we can't talk about, but so if there's something I bring up, we can't talk about.
I cannot reveal the weapons codes. I'm sorry.
Right. But how did you get? What would you say was like your first? I don't want to say big break, but your first break in the business where you would say, you know what, I got my foot in the door finally.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it, and I've had numerous small, substantial breaks. I have not had a huge break, but I've had lots and lots of little ones that have just kind of pushed me along. And I have a very lucky, satisfying life. But one of the biggest ones that I got in New York, I'd been studying improv, and very satisfyingly in New York City, and having a great time with it. This was a time when improv was still kind of an arcane practice. There weren't like improv groups on every block. It was more like, they were rare. I think there were probably 5 improv schools, groups in New York City when I started in the 80s.
Yeah.
And now there must be, I don't know, hundreds. I think every school has one. So that doesn't mean too much, but I had been studying improv, and then I was also auditioning for commercials. So one day I went and I did an audition, and I booked this job as a man on the street interviewer, doing actual interviews with people in a store in Texas, a grocery store. It was called Skaggs Alpha Beta. Not a very nice name, but a great store,
Yeah.
Skaggs. And I got this job, and it developed into a 5 years of yearly contracts of doing all their commercials, all their radio, all their TV. This was in the mid 80s, late 80s. And it actually paid very, very well. And it established me. I was able to use all the stuff I was learning in improv with these people, these shoppers that I would interview, and little, things I would do to the camera. And there were no scripts. So I did hundreds of commercials that were completely off the cuff. And it paid very well. And it gave me a lot of confidence in front of a camera with nothing. And it established me as a certain kind of performer. And subsequently, it led to many other similar sorts of contracts with other companies, other grocery chains mostly, but also banks and department stores and restaurants. So that it actually turned out, that one audition that I went on turned out to be worth quite a lot, 10 or 15 years worth of really great work. Now,
And
go ahead.
It's not easy too, Jim, to stand with a microphone and try to ask people when they're coming out of the grocery store or somebody coming out of the bank. I mean, you talked about where you were bashful when you were doing these impressions, but
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be afraid to interview people or, go up to them. You got to really interrupt. Sometimes they're in a hurry. They want to get home. They don't want to be bothered. So, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do that too.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I definitely drilled and understood more about communication, and I studied communication very thoroughly. And I also just did a heck of a lot of improv. So I began to be quite comfortable. At first it was rocky, but if you keep pushing through, you realize, the mind is an amazing thing. And if you just kind of take that first answer that you get when you're posed with some sort of question or challenge, more often than not, especially in an entertainment sense, it's going to be just fine. It's going to be a fine answer, and you just roll with it, and you don't have to fuss with it too much. I do a lot worse when I have to really like find the right answer and work with people and get some sort of a committee decision. I'm like, oh my God, can't we just do what we thought of first? There's so much power in that.
Yeah.
But that was a massive break for me, and so when I came back to LA from New York City in the early 90s, I had this big reel of stuff to show people that was quite impressive, I think. And I had offers and for TV series, and I got on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, as I think you mentioned, and that was a big, a nice break.
Yeah, if I remember, you were Professor Mansfield, and I mean, you were tremendous with that. And I mean, think about this too. Not many were on more than maybe a couple episodes. Character actors. You were on about 6 or 7 episodes. So
that's right. I came back as a different character.
Yeah.
Professor Mansfield evaporated into the mist. That was actually supposed to be. That was one of my missteps, because that was supposed to be a kind of a pilot, what they call a backdoor pilot. I forget the term. There's a term of art about that. But that was supposed to be an example of, well, what would a spin-off show with this professor character be like in this world of the Fresh Prince and, adjacent characters, I guess. And instead of following through with that, I leaped onto another project, which unfortunately sank to the bottom of the ocean. So Professor Mansfield, I think of all the things I've done in my career, that's the thing I get recognized for most of all, is that role. So I consider it a pretty big misstep, but I've been, just trying to run to keep up with that train that took off.
And I bet a lot of people may not know this either. I mean, we always talk about that great show on ABC in the 90s, Whose Line Is It Anyway? But I believe you did the British version of that in the late 80s as well. So talk about that a little bit.
1991. I remember because my daughter was one, and I was in Florida, and I would fly back and forth from New York to do this show. Yeah, we got approached. I was part of a improv school theater called the National Improvisational Theater. I spent many years there working. It's where I was trained. It's where I taught a little bit, and I did all the posters, and it was a big part of our lives. It was a block away from where we lived in Chelsea. And this British show called Whose Line Is It Anyway, which none of us had seen, and which hadn't aired in the United States, came to town to look for talent because they were going to do some episodes in New York City with American improvisers and some of their regulars, some of whom were American. So they came out and they were looking at everybody, and they were going around to these comedy clubs, and they were looking at the groups. And luckily, there weren't too many groups then because they looked at our group and they went, "Wow, you guys are the best, and we want to pick you and you." Which was not so comfortable, but they picked me and my friend Christopher Smith, who is a brilliant improviser and friend. And they said, "You'll be on the show." And we went, oh, "Okay." And then, because we at that time were doing things very elaborate and ambitious things like, well, let's do an improvised full Broadway musical, and let's do one-act plays and all this. We were really trying to push the boundaries of this art form. And they were like, in the show, they were like, "Okay, do a scene where you pick up this prop and you say something funny." We're like, all right. I couldn't get too worked up over it. It was like, oh, this is kind of like basic class, but okay. And we did it, and it was fun. And I worked with Mike McShane, who I still know, a lovely guy, Ryan Stiles, and Josie Lawrence, and somebody else, but did a few episodes, and it was fun. And Clive Anderson was fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. I got to do impressions. I got to do William Shatner, and I don't know, Kevin Costner, and Jimmy Stewart, a bunch of different ones. I don't know, crazy ones. And and we never saw I didn't see the show for years.
Right.
And then finally, I got a VHS tape, and I was like, oh, that turned out pretty good, and subsequently over the years, that's another one where people go, "Were you on Whose Line?" And I saw you on Whose Line. Now it's on YouTube, of course, and
yeah,
it's the young Jim Meskimen and Christopher Smith, and everybody's younger. And I was wearing in both episodes, a really, really fashionable shirt in 1991. And today it looks a little bit like I'm from the Ringling Brothers Circus.
And I was thinking about this too, Jim, that I'm sure you probably could have asked, your mother's influence could have maybe got you in the door sooner. But it seems like to me, you didn't want to rely on her. You wanted to be your own person. So you took the odd jobs and, you did the man on the street thing. So that's a credit to you as well, because it sounds like really you wanted to establish yourself. Not that you're not proud of your mom, of course you are, but you wanted to be separate and not rely on her to get you into that, big break.
Well, I'm glad it appears that way. In fact, I tried to use her connections as much as I could, but I was in New York, whole different place, whole different set of people to deal with. Very little television at that time was being done in New York, and very little film. So it was mostly a theater town and a commercial town and a radio commercial town. So, and no animation really to speak of. So I didn't really, I had like, I tried to get her recommendation for an agent, and that didn't happen. So I really sort of, obviously, she would have loved to have helped me more, I think, and I would have been very grateful for any kind of, but I think the biggest gift that my mom gave me was not these connections of knowing Ron Howard or meeting Gary Marshall or anything like that, which was definitely helpful, but her example that she set as a professional, because I lived with her. I saw what she did. I saw her attitude, her work hard ethic, because she worked hard.
Yeah.
To be a workaday actor is, and I know it now very subjectively, it's tough work. You've got to hustle all the time. You got to do auditions, prepare auditions, and you used to have to drive all over town to do them. Now you do them at home, but you still have to prepare and do a great job. You have to be put up with the, all of the disappointment and the evaluation of yourself and the rejection, famously. You have to put up with all that and keep going and then do things that are harder, like do a play. My mother used to do plays in the off season all the time. When she
Yeah.
was playing softball, she would be in Seattle doing Eugene O'Neill, or she went to Virginia one time. She had a one-woman show about the poetry of Edna St. Vincent Millay. Very difficult material. Tennessee Williams, and that's hard work. All of that's hard work just to do it, and then to bring artistry to it and to infuse it with something that's inspiring and wonderful. That's a whole nother thing. And she would do that because that was her work ethic. So I saw that, and that was like the big gift, the big leg up that she gave me.
Right, definitely. And not that I would ever encourage this, Jim, but you are so good with these impressions. I was thinking about this. If you ever did an audio podcast, you could pretend to be George Bush and people would think they were talking to the president because you can't tell the difference. I mean, that's how talented you are. And,
Very
it's
much.
one thing to do impressions, but when you get them down packed, it's great.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess about time I did one. So there's a modus operandi, something like that. I don't know Latin as good as I used to. Down in Crawford, they speak Latin all the time. It's a kind of a Mexican Latin.
That is phenomenal. And, I was thinking about it too. Have you ever done Nixon? Because it sounds like you do a great Nixon.
Yeah, I've done Nixon quite often for television. I can't mention the show, but and I've done it on my own. I actually one time I was fooling around with GarageBand on my laptop, and there's a setting called megaphone or something, and for you make a recording, and then it fuzzes it all up like this. And I thought, oh, that sounds just like the Nixon Watergate tapes. So I did a whole kind of a Nixon recording, and I futzed it all up, and I got a job out of it by just putting it up. And someone said, hey, we'd like to use your Nixon in this big show. I'm like, all right, here you go. So I've gotten a lot of work by creating samples with impressions. I mean, that's how I got the Colonel Sanders job, actually, as by reaching out to a copywriter that I knew with a recording of Colonel Sanders as I remembered him. And that's about 6 years ago now. And it's been a very, very lucrative job.
I'll tell you, you're tremendous. And one guy you did, and I know you did a lot of it as a tribute to his work, and I think he was a good friend of yours, was the late Robin Williams. And you did him very well, and I mean, you did some great impressions of him. And, I think there was that poem you wrote about him, which was very well done as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish he had been a good friend of mine. I feel like we had a kinship, but I never really got to know him at all. But I met him a couple of times, and lovely guy. Got to start on Happy Days, for one thing. So I'm glad you liked the poem. Yeah, that poem was one of those things where I the day after he died, I just couldn't stop thinking about him, and I had this idea, and I just dropped everything and created that poem, and people really, I think, appreciated it a lot. So.
Definitely. So let me ask you, you came out with a book recently, and if I've got it wrong, I apologize, but it's called The Working Actor Method. And one of the things I saw that you teach people is when you think that you're a good actor, you really don't know you are yet, or something like that. So talk about that book a little bit, because it sounds like it's going to be.
I don't remember saying that, but that's okay. Well, I should say at the outset that the book is not quite available yet. It was available, and now we're in between platforms. We've switched platforms. So if someone is interested and they're looking for it, the best thing to do is to contact me at jimmeskimen.com, and I will be happy to direct you to it. But at the moment, it's hidden somewhere on the interweb. But I think that refers to, that sounds a little discouraging, the way that it was put. So I would say that you learn a lot from performing and from auditioning. And that learning is like a step on the path, and it's a path that has really no end. It is an artistic path, right? And I think a lot of actors starting out have all kinds of desires and fantasies and images in their head about what it'll be like when they have a great job and what they will do someday in front of an audience. And that's very good. I mean, it's potent to have that. You should dream that way. But you'll learn a lot from actually trying to put it in the physical universe by like saying, okay, well, you know, there's this speech that I've learned or this character that I've created. Now I should put it in front of some other people and see what their response is and see how I feel and how it changes. Because a performance changes. I mean, take a guy. Are you musical at all, Mike?
Oh, yeah. I like music. Yeah.
Do you play anything?
No, I don't play anything, but I enjoy it. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, there are guys, we all know these are guys and girls that will sit around and they'll strum a guitar and they'll spend hours practicing guitar and practicing chords and listening to songs they like and working out what is that chord progression, and you know, and they'll learn something. And like them playing in their house is very different from them going to a coffee house and suddenly doing a half an hour for the people there, or going to church and playing, or, you know, it changes. That dynamic changes their performance and everything. And they'll feel completely different. You know, suddenly they'll be like, oh, I don't want to make any mistakes. You know, and other things will happen. And they'll also see the impact that their work has. So I think probably what we were alluding to there was the idea that one needs to start to test out and get into a conversation with your audience. And that these days it can be done pretty painlessly for actors and voice artists by using social media. You open yourself up to a lot of criticism, but you also just kind of open yourself up to an audience who must be a little bit interested because they clicked on your YouTube video or whatever. They wanted to see you do a speech from, you know, Long Day's Journey into Night or whatever you've memorized, you know, or something you've written. And it used to be kind of difficult to shoot a movie. It used to be difficult to, you know, get a stage and all this stuff. And now, you know, you actually can set aside part of your house, as I've done, and get a green screen or some neutral background and shoot yourself being a character and show it to some friends or show it to the world.
Yeah.
And you'll learn something by watching it. We never really had that before. And you'll learn something from the interchange that happens, and you'll begin to make discoveries, and you'll begin to have some judgment. You know, you'll have experience and judgment. And by judgment, I don't mean, you know, being condescending or being condemnatory, but you'll understand more, and you'll be go, oh, well, that is good when I do that. When I feel that way and I think I'm projecting this, it doesn't really show.
Yeah.
My eyebrows, you know, I look at actors sometimes, and some actors have these eyebrows that can go way up like this. And I'm like, God, that would be good to be able to express that with your face. I can't any more than I can turn my tongue upside down like my wife and my daughter can. It's genetics. So you're like, okay, well, I learned that. You know, I can't do it. When I think I'm doing it, it doesn't show. So don't rely on that. This is just one of the things that I've learned. So by getting into production in one way or another, you'll feel better and you'll learn something, and you might even eventually develop a kind of an audience.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think you also stated as well, is that, you know, acting coaches are tremendous. They do a great job, but they're not always going to teach you the rules of the game. Like, you're going to learn that more when you finally get out there. And that's something that's very important to an aspiring actress or actor, is they got to understand that this will get them to a certain point, but they're really going to have to make it happen when they go out there, that they're going to have to learn on their own.
Yeah, and that's the crazy exciting part of it. You know, once you get out of the little warm cubicle that you get into as you're an incubating talent, and you get out into the world of like, what do people need? What is entertainment? You know, an audition full of 100 people, and you know, this shows an opportunity to really experience life. And you know, there's all these audition stories about people who became superstars and what they did at auditions. You just go, oh my God. Like Barbara Streisand, apparently there's a very famous story about how she came in on stage somewhere and there was a stool and she was going to do a number, and she just came in all kind of flouncy and sort of impatient and just chewing gum. And they said, you take the gum out of your mouth. And so she made a big show of taking the gum out and sticking it under the stool, right? And then she does the number and leaves. And somebody, I don't know, the stage manager, the person running the audition, went over to the stool and looked at it. No gum. It had all been a creation. So like, oh, these little things have impact. Obviously, her singing was pretty off the chain as well. But these little things that make you memorable, that's the kind of risks that you take as an actor. And as many times that I've thought, oh, maybe I should try to stick out and do something really weird here, really unexpected. And most of the time I bail out. I don't have the guts. It just seems too precious. But when I have, sometimes it's worked out good.
Right. And now talk about this new show you've been doing, because isn't this something similar to the book? It's called the Working Actor. So talk about that a little bit as well.
Well, again, I'm trying to figure out exactly what you mean. My course.
Well, I've seen them on the YouTube. Yeah.
Some of the clips?
Some of the clips that you do and things like that. It's real cool.
Okay. Well, let's talk about my one-man show.
One-man show, yep.
That's ancillary. But so for years and years I've done, when things are kind of slow, or when I'm feeling like, a little uninspired or a little underutilized as an actor, I decide to put on a one-man show, and it cheers me up, and audiences love it, and it gives me a chance to showcase specifically my impressions skill, which these days includes a lot of Patrick Stewart for some reason. Maybe it's because the older I get, the more I look like him. But I put together about an hour and 15 minutes of music and comedy and talking about voices and doing many, many voices. And the opening number now, I've got a new opening number that I created that has about over 30 voices just in that opening number. And I'm going to be putting it on this weekend. So starting tonight, August 25th, Friday, August 25th at 8:30 p.m. at the Acting Center in Los Angeles in Sherman Oaks. And so that's going to be happening this I don't know if this will work.
This evening. Yeah.
I don't know if this works, but your viewers can click on that. Will that work?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, thank you for indulging me. That's technology. So I'm doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Saturday and Sunday performances are at 8, and the Friday one's at 8:30. It's a little bit later because of sound. And I love to do it because it's interactive, it's improvisational, it's musical, it's a ton of voices, and it's a little bit like my superpower or my magic trick that I can do. And so, since I live with it, I forget that people are delighted by it so much. And when I get in front of an audience, again, I experience something different. And we have a conversation, because every time you do a show, it's a little bit of a conversation with the audience because they respond and they let you know when they're bored, and they let you know when it's interesting, and they applaud occasionally. And so this show is called Jimpressions, which is my handle that I use on Instagram, and I've used it on this show, the one-man show, which has changed over the years a lot. Characters come and go, some people. Kevin Spacey is back in my show. He was gone for a long time. Now he's back.
And now do you add a character ever to surprise the fans when you do a show, like somebody Absolutely. That you haven't done before?
Oh yeah. And I'm going to open it up to suggestions too tonight. Something I never do, but I thought, hey, maybe people will be expecting one, or they'll have some favorites that I haven't thought of, and I'm going to challenge myself that way and say, let me open it up to suggestions. Anybody have anybody that I've omitted that should be in my repertoire? And we'll see.
And it must be such a rush too, Jim, when you're out there. I mean, you're still you've done so many things in your life, but when you get to be out there in front of a crowd like that and you see that they're responding, that 12-year-old boy in you has still got to appear where you just are so, you get such a rush when you're doing it.
Absolutely. It's like being the 12-year-old boy without the fear and with a bank account. So it's nice. I can drive as well. So there's that.
Right. Exactly. Now, let me ask you, Billy Crystal's done impressions his whole life. Do you do a good Billy Crystal or what?
I have not deigned to do that. I have so much respect for Billy Crystal. There's no reason why I shouldn't. Uh, that would be a good one to do. Thank you. I'll take that up. I saw his show 700 Sundays one time, and oh boy, what a great show that was. And he just delighted the audience. I saw him years and years ago when I went with my mom when I was a teenager, and there was a big ABC affiliates dinner, and both he and Robin performed.
Right.
And I'll never forget it. I mean, Billy did his, I think it's called 15 Rounds, his Muhammad Ali tribute, which is a routine that he did. So he does Muhammad Ali and Howard Cosell, the sportscaster, and tracking his career. And that was gorgeous. And then Robin just messed around. And it was like, wow, this guy's on fire. It's amazing. Oh, just says whatever comes to mind. Oh.
And, I was thinking about it too. Some actors that we're going way back, but I thought about that you would be very good at. I could see you doing a great Richard Mulligan. He's the guy, of course, was on Soap and Empty Nest for years. He played Bert on Soap. He was tremendous. I mean,
Mulligan. Wow.
Yeah.
I remember what he looks like so well. He's not well known for his
Christopher Lloyd. I think you would do an excellent Christopher Lloyd.
Sure. We're all enamored of Christopher Lloyd. Marty.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing where those things are kind of priceless, that when you could do that type of work and you're making people happy and you're entertaining a crowd, that's got to be so much better than actually being behind the camera, doing a TV show, because there you're recording and sometimes you'll get a live studio audience. But when you're actually out there and you're doing this, that's got to be so rewarding for you.
Yes, you're exactly right. I think most actors you talk to will say that if they are at all inclined to be on the stage, many aren't, but if they are, they recognize that there's a very spiritual, if you will, connection that occurs, and it's very uplifting and just very, very unique. That's why so many actors live a life of abject poverty, but they do plays. And they have their wealth is all in that experience, and they struggle to pay the rent, and they have a crappy little apartment. But boy, they're gonna do King Lear next month, and they just did Guys and Dolls, and part of me, when I go to a play and I read the little playbill, the booklet that talks about has all the little paragraphs about each actor and what they've done, and it's all loaded with these credits that I will never have. And there's something of me. It's like looking through a gate at a beautiful paradise. You're like, oh, if I could only walk through this gate. I'm on this other side. But my mom has been able to steer her boat down both oceans, if you will. She's really been part of almost everything in entertainment, and it's no wonder that people just love her.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, you can't think of Happy Days without thinking of her. I mean, you really can't. And another show she did that I really loved, and it was unfortunate it only lasts like 2 years, was Brooklyn Bridge, because
I know
that show was just as good as Happy Days, but unfortunately, the audience, whatever it was, I think CBS just didn't give it enough of a chance. I think it could have lasted a few more years.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you, another guy I thought of. Have you ever done a good Jackie Gleason yet?
Jackie Gleason. Well, when I think of Jackie Gleason, I think of the variety show of the Honeymooners that he did. Norton. Yeah, I love Jackie Gleason. I used to watch him every Saturday night on the Honeymooners was, of course, that sitcom early, like in the late 50s and then early 60s.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into, when he went down to Miami Beach, he did a whole variety show, and they would do a Honeymooners segment, and it was always musical. They would go in song. Yeah. It was like, it was great.
Yeah, that was another great show. So let me ask you, Jim, for people that obviously don't live in the Los Angeles area, is there a way to stream these shows by any chance?
Not yet, but you can always go to my YouTube channel. I always put up clips. Also, I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Jimpressions or at Jim Meskimen. If you go to my website, jimmeskimen.com, you can sign up, get on my mailing list, and I'll tell you about shows. And I hope to be touring one day.
Well, I hope you
And
come around this area. I
I
definitely
hope
love
so
to
too.
see you. You
Yeah, I
know,
would love to come back
d-
east.
now, real quick, back to Star Trek Resurgence, because
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing you're doing. I mean, what could some of your fans expect going forward with that video game? I mean, do you see it being something that's going to be around for a very long time? How do you feel about it?
Oh, sure. I think it'll have legs. People seem to like it a lot. It captures the spirit of the original series very much, so that's valuable to people.
Yeah.
And insofar as it's an interesting set of moral and ethical and strategic challenges, and very well produced. Obviously, it's like the special effects and CGI is just amazing, and the vocal performances. I have to say, I did the best I could do, and the guy that plays Spock is a friend of mine. His name's Piotr Michael.
Yeah.
He's a youngish man. you know, I've known him since he was in his 20s. He's a bit older now, but he does such a great Spock that every time I heard it, when every now and then I would get to listen to some of the other. We're always recording things now separately, and so I very rarely heard the other performers. But every now and then they'd play me a little Spock, and I'd go, God, that's great. There's a certain kind of appreciation that impressionists have for other impressionists. And when somebody just knocks one over the fence, you're like, thank you. That was great. And Piotr Michael is someone to watch.
And the thing is, Jim, is there are so many Star Trek fans that if it's done right, whether it's, a reboot or, an updated version or a video game, if it's done right, people will get into it because that's like a show that just will never die for fans. They love it. So, I mean, that's really something that you get to be a part of that's going to be very special because now you're getting a whole new group of fans and some older fans who really love that series.
I hope so. Yeah, I was very excited to get the job. I auditioned for it, and I was just shocked and amazed to get hired. But I sure loved it. I worked on it quite a bit, all during the pandemic. Various times they'd call up, and we'd do hours and hours of, that's how it is with video games. You just do so much recording. You're like doing 10 movies at once. And I'm going to be at the Salt Lake City Comic-Con in late September, so around
Nice.
September 24th, 25th. So I'll hopefully.
And those Comic Cons are very popular. I mean, you see the different shows. I mean, there's so many of them. The X Files. There's sliders that they do. I mean, people love these Comic Cons. So I mean, you'll get a good turnout for that.
Oh yeah, it's a big show at Salt Lake City, so I'm looking forward to it. I don't go to those cons very often. I've never gone like as a.
Well, you'll be amazed. I mean, I am telling you, you will see fans that'll come dressed.
Yeah.
And, so you'll see somebody with Spock on, it'll be crazy. But Jim, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. It was a real honor for me. I've always wanted to interview you. And folks, you really have to go to YouTube and check out this guy's work, and especially the voices he does. I mean, I could sit there all day just watching it. I mean, I watched for like 3 hours last night. So if you get the chance, folks,
oh my God,
go on YouTube and watch this man because he is a very gifted and talented actor. And I really do thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And anyone who's in the LA area, the Jimpressions show is this weekend, August 25th, 26th, 27th at the Acting Center. JimMeskimen.com is where you can go to find out more info.
That's great. And thank you again. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone.